Where can you find 6,000 local businesses with just one click? EverythingMidmo.com.
Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Behind the Stripes webcast. This is sports editor Joe Walljasper along with Tribune football beat writer Dave Matter over here to my left. Today we'll talk about the Texas visit to Missouri, a homecoming opponent. Normally you like to pick on a patsy, not so much
Not
now,
quite.
the number 3 team in the nation. Texas coming off a 16-13 victory over Oklahoma. Any way, shape, or form, is this a vulnerable or beatable team?
Well, you have to kind of dig deep to find some reasons to where Missouri can win this game, but we've seen some crazy games over the years and even this season, so I don't think it's out of the realm of any possibility of happening. You know, Texas is coming off their Oklahoma game. If you're Missouri, you're hoping that they're still happy with that one and kind of looking past Missouri. Their offense isn't quite as explosive as it was a year ago. A lot of the same guys back. Got the Heisman finalist and Colt McCoy back. He isn't the same player, or at least his production isn't the same as it was a year ago. So they're up there as one of the best teams in the country. I don't know if they're playing like it every week, but it's quite a defense, and that defense that they have can make up for any kind of struggles that they have on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I almost think for Missouri to have a chance, it would have to be a really low-scoring game. I could see, I think Texas, their fans at least, are a little disgruntled with the offense. I mean, they're not scoring a ton of points. So at Missouri with a sellout crowd, maybe Missouri's defense comes out pretty jacked up. I could see them holding them to a reasonable point total, but it could be a whole other story on the other side when you've got a gimpy quarterback trying to make any kind of headway against that defense in a running game that I think Missouri's running game ranks 91st in the nation, and Texas has a number 1 run defense. So not a great matchup. Texas is a 2-touchdown favorite, which sounds about right to me.
Yeah, and the turnover margin, I think, is a big difference between these two teams, too. Texas is number 1 in the Big 12. Missouri is dead last, which is very un-Gary Pinkel-like, that they are just not getting any kind of takeaways, and lately they've been giving the ball away a lot. So that's something to watch in this game. Texas defense last year was good, but didn't take the ball away ever. Now they're doing it all the time, and I think that's what makes them really tough to beat.
McCoy's numbers, as you mentioned, are down a little. He's completed a disgraceful 70% of his passes. Not running the ball as much. Are you seeing what differences maybe are you seeing from him from last year to this to explain that?
I don't know if it's so much him, but the cast around him. The thing that Mac Brown has pointed to as the biggest difference is they lost Quan Cosby, who was a great receiver for them. They had a 1-2 punch of him and Jordan Shipley last year. Now they've got Shipley, who's still one of the best in the country, but there's no number 2 receiver that really stands out that forces defense to game plan around him. So it's kind of Shipley and a cast of other guys, and one of them or 2 of them make a big play every once in a while, but there's just not a lot of consistency in the passing game there. So McCoy's kind of figuring out what to do there, and it's kind of been a mess, especially early in games. They're really sluggish, not getting that explosive play against the Oklahoma game especially. I mean, they muddled through that whole entire first half until things finally broke through for them in the end, but that really still didn't have much of an offense that day. And I think that's the biggest difference from last year and this year. Also, their running game, they've had 5 different tailbacks that they've kind of identified as the main guy, and they just can't stay healthy. So it's not a perfect offense by any means, and it's I think it's something that could come back to haunt them if their defense has a bad day, and it hasn't had one yet. But if they do one of these days here in the Big 12.
I think they're a little bit like Missouri in that people had big expectations for their offensive line. I think they returned 4 starters. Missouri returns 3, but like Missouri, they've been nothing special up front. I think those tailbacks, if they would pick one, they're not bad players, and if they would use them, I think sometimes they get a little too cute. I also think that in terms of a second wide receiver, that Marquise Goodwin, the freshman who's like an elite track athlete, he looked like, at least in the Oklahoma game, that he could be emerging as that number 2 guy. He was not just fast, he was making some football plays. So wouldn't be surprised if he, as the second half of the year goes on, that he kind of becomes and if that were to happen and take some of the heat off Shipley, as far as defenses are concerned, I think they could take off here in the second half of the season. MU's offensive line, as we've discussed, is I think every year since the Big 12 started, maybe not early in the Big 12, but since Pinkel's been here, against Oklahoma and Texas, they just seem overmatched by the athleticism of the Texas or Oklahoma defensive line. Any chance of that being different this year?
Tough call. You know, Missouri's O-line is coming off its best game of the year. I thought they played well, held up well at Oklahoma State, but this is a whole different kind of matchup here with Texas D-line. I was just watching the replay of the Oklahoma game, and that front four is just really good.
Yeah,
You know, Lamar Houston, defensive tackle, he doesn't get the attention that Ndamukong Suh at Nebraska or Gerald McCoy at Oklahoma gets, but in the Oklahoma game, he was making just as many big plays. He gets so much penetration up the middle. They blitz from all different angles. They're really going to have to put Missouri's offensive line on alert, and those guys cannot afford any breakdowns. Or Gabbert, the fans that would like to see Gabbert on the sideline because of the injury, they might get their wish if the offensive line doesn't come through, because it's a great line, and they're not even getting that much production from Sergio Kindle, the All-American defensive end outside linebacker, because the guy on the other end, what is his name? Sam Acho. Acho has really been the guy, the great pass rusher for him this year. So it's an impressive front four, that's for sure. Biggest test Missouri's faced this year, and they've faced a pretty good one from Nebraska.
I always think Missouri needs to try to go vertical in the passing game if they can get enough time to do it and throw it up and see what Daniel Alexander can do. They're going to have a hard time moving it down the field incrementally against this kind of team. I think they're going to have a heck of a time running the ball against this team, to the extent of, you know, they're committed to trying to run, but if you're getting 1 or 2 yards a carry, you're not doing yourself any favors. So we'll see if they can get any headway in that. But I think if you got any tricks in the bag, now would be the time to unleash them, because it's going to be a tough matchup for Missouri. All right, tune in next Wednesday, and we will have a recap of the Texas game and look ahead to Colorado.